My mother-in-law didn't just dislike me, she tried to replace me. And my husband almost let her, until I exposed the secret she hid for 20 years. I never thought my marriage would be threatened by someone outside of it. But the truth is, the danger came from within the family. From a woman who smiled at me, hugged me, told everyone she was so happy to have a new daughter-in-law, while quietly plotting to destroy my place in my own home. This story isn't about simple jealousy. It's about control. It's about obsession. And it's about the moment I discovered the document that shattered the perfect image my mother-in-law built, a document revealing the dark truth she hid even from her own son. Before I found that file, I thought I was losing my mind. Now I know. I was losing myself to a woman who wanted my life, my marriage, and even my child. But you need to see how it all began, because monsters rarely show their teeth at first. When I met Daniel, he felt like peace. Gentle, grounded, soft-spoken. He was the kind of man who made the world feel less heavy. Loving him was easy. Building a future with him felt natural. And with that future came his mother, Helen. The first time she shook my hand, she smiled, but her eyes stayed cold. She looked at me with that quiet judgment mothers sometimes hide behind politeness. A look that said, "This is the woman who thinks she deserves my son?" But I ignored it. Love makes you hopeful and sometimes blind. Helen was the kind of mother who treated her son like he was made of gold. She adored him, but not in a healthy way. The type of love that doesn't let go, even when a child becomes a man. In the beginning, she visited often. Too often, honestly, but I brushed it off as enthusiasm. Everything stayed manageable until I got pregnant. The very moment she heard the news, her behavior shifted. It was subtle at first, a strange gleam in her eyes, a possessive tone in her voice. Then she began inserting herself into every part of my pregnancy. She insisted on attending every doctor appointment. She bought nursery furniture without asking us. She corrected me constantly, even for things like how I held my belly. And she started referring to the baby as hers. Not your baby, not my grandchild, just my baby. Daniel laughed at it. "Mom's just excited," he'd say. But excitement doesn't come with manipulation. And Helen's sweetness slowly twisted into something else. She would talk to me softly. "Don't tire yourself, sweetheart. You seem overwhelmed." Then she'd turn to Daniel and whisper, "She's so forgetful lately. Are you sure she's okay? Maybe you should keep an eye on her." To me, she was helpful. To Daniel, she painted me as unstable, incapable, unprepared. That was her first step. Lower me, raise herself. And I didn't know it yet. But this was only the beginning of a much bigger plan. A plan to make me look unfit. A plan to convince Daniel I wasn't ready to be a mother. A plan to slowly tighten her grip on our household. A plan built on lies, while she hid a past far darker than anything she accused me of. The pressure grows, the manipulation deepens, the marriage begins to crack. At first, I didn't realize Helen was setting traps for me. I thought she was simply overbearing, maybe too involved, maybe too attached. But then small incidents started happening. Incidents that were always blamed on me. One afternoon, she came to visit unexpectedly. Daniel wasn't home. She walked straight into the kitchen, opened the refrigerator, and frowned dramatically. "Why is the baby's milk expired?" she said, loudly. I was confused. "What milk? I haven't bought any yet." Before I could finish, she pulled out a carton and shoved it into my hands. This is expired. Do you have any idea how dangerous this is?" My heart dropped, because I hadn't bought it. I hadn't even seen it before. I opened my mouth to protest, but she was already dialing Daniel, right in front of me. "Daniel, I'm worried about her. She's distracted. She didn't even notice the milk was spoiled. I don't think she's taking this pregnancy seriously." I stood there frozen, staring at the milk I knew she had placed there. But how could I explain that without sounding paranoid? That was the moment I felt something shift, a cold realization. She was manufacturing evidence that I was careless. And Daniel? He didn't defend me. He didn't accuse me either. Just silence. A silence that said, I don't know if I can trust you right now. That hurt more than any accusation. But Helen didn't stop there. Her next move was even more calculated. She started coming over when Daniel was at work. Sometimes she was just passing by. Sometimes she brought soup. Sometimes she claimed she felt a motherly instinct that something was wrong. One day, she accidentally walked into the laundry room and found a small pile of damp baby clothes I hadn't even washed yet. Oh, honey, babies can get infections from moisture. You really need to be more careful. Then Daniel came home, and she repeated the same comment, but this time with more worry and more judgment.
It was always the same pattern. She created a problem. She exaggerated it. She reported it to Daniel. She made me look irresponsible. Little cracks started forming between me and my husband. Daniel wasn't cruel. He wasn't even angry. He was just confused, second-guessing me, asking if I was stressed, overwhelmed, not myself. Exactly what Helen wanted. But then her behavior escalated. One evening, Daniel came home early. Helen was at the house again. I heard them whispering in the living room. She seems emotional lately. I'm worried about postpartum depression. It can start even before birth, you know? Daniel sighed, tired. I don't know. Maybe she's just exhausted. No, Helen interrupted. Women like her need support. She's fragile. Women like her. Fragile. Unstable. Those words were daggers because she wasn't worried about me. She was building a case for why she needed to take over once the baby arrived, a case for why I was unfit, a case for why she, not me, should be in control. But the scariest part, Daniel didn't shut her down. He didn't say, she's fine. He didn't say, you're overreacting. He just sat there silently, letting her plant seeds. And I realized, if this continued, by the time the baby was born, I would look like the unstable one, the irresponsible one, the unsafe one. Exactly what Helen wanted.
But what she didn't know was this. Her entire strategy, her entire web of manipulation was built on a foundation so rotten, so dark, so dangerous, that once I uncovered it, everything she had done would come crashing down. And that moment was closer than she thought. The moment when things shift. The moment the truth begins to surface. The breaking point came on a night I will never forget. I was 8 months pregnant, exhausted, swollen, emotionally drained from constantly defending myself against things I never even did. Daniel and I had barely spoken without tension for weeks. Helen's presence hung over our home like a storm cloud. That evening, Helen had stopped by just to check in, as she always called it. I was too tired to fight, so I stayed in bed while she hovered around the house like she owned it. At one point, I heard her in the nursery. Her voice was soft, almost humming, as if she were comforting a baby that wasn't even born yet. My little one, Grandma's here. Don't you worry, I'll take such good care of you, better than anyone else ever could. A chill ran down my spine. Something in her tone felt possessive, not loving, not grandmotherly, possessive. I stood outside the door, listening, frozen. Then her voice changed, lower, sharper, like someone confessing a secret to themselves. She's not ready. She doesn't know what she's doing. I'll have to step in, for the baby's sake. That was the first time I realized she didn't just want to help. She wanted to take over. My heart beat hard against my ribs. If Daniel heard her speaking like this, maybe he would finally understand. I moved closer, slow, quiet, hoping to catch more. But I bumped into the doorframe, and the small click made her spin around. She stared at me like a caught animal. But then she smiled. "Oh, sweetheart, I didn't hear you there," she said casually. "I was just reorganizing the baby's blankets. You really shouldn't leave things so messy." She always twisted the situation, always turned it around. But that night, I saw something dark flicker in her eyes, a hint that her obsession was deeper than I had imagined. Daniel came home shortly after. Helen rushed to him, placing a hand on his arm, her voice trembling. "I'm worried about her. She's acting strangely. I found her eavesdropping on me. I think the pregnancy is overwhelming her." I snapped. "I wasn't eavesdropping. You were talking to the crib like you were the mother." But Helen gasped, widening her eyes as if she were afraid of me. "Daniel, do you hear the way she's speaking? This isn't normal." Something inside me broke. Not because Helen manipulated the moment again, but because Daniel looked torn, conflicted, hesitant. A husband shouldn't hesitate. That night after Helen left, Daniel sat beside me on the bed. He didn't touch me. He didn't comfort me. He just asked me a question that shattered me. "Are you sure you're okay? You've been so overwhelmed lately. Maybe my mom is right. Maybe you do need help." "Help? For what? For things Helen caused?" I stared at him, speechless. I felt like I was disappearing, like Helen wasn't just trying to replace me, she was succeeding. But as painful as that night was, it did something important. It opened my eyes. I realized I couldn't just react emotionally anymore. That only made me look worse, exactly what Helen wanted.
If I wanted to save my marriage and protect my baby, I needed proof, real proof of who Helen truly was. Not the sweet grandmother she pretended to be, not the caring mother figure she showed Daniel, but the woman she really was. A woman who once did something so dark, so dangerous, that it had been buried for decades. And fate, or maybe justice, was about to place that truth right into my hands. The secret finally comes to light. The truth Helen hid for 20 years surfaces. The day everything changed began completely ordinary. Daniel had left for work. Helen, thankfully, hadn't shown up yet, and I decided to spend the morning cleaning the house. Not because it was dirty, but because cleaning felt like the only part of my life I still had control over. I was in the living room, sorting through a stack of boxes that had been gathering dust since we moved in. Most of them were Daniel's childhood things. Old yearbooks, trophies, photo albums, stuff his mother insisted on bringing over because she didn't have enough space at home. I opened one box absent-mindedly, and a small beige folder slid out. It wasn't labeled clearly, just a name written in pen. Helen M. Turner. My heart thumped once, twice. I hesitated. I knew this was personal, private, but something inside me whispered, "She has no problem digging into your life. Maybe it's time you see hers." I opened the folder, and the world stopped. Inside were documents, old, yellowed with age, but horrifyingly clear. A report, filed by a social worker. It detailed an incident from 20 years ago, an incident involving Helen and a child. Not Daniel, not a relative, a baby she had been babysitting. The report described how the infant had been found unattended, crying, in distress, left alone while Helen had gone to run an errand. Neighbors heard the baby screaming for nearly an hour before calling authorities. My stomach twisted as I turned the page. Further notes stated, neglect, failure to provide adequate supervision, a temporary restriction placed on Helen from babysitting minors, mandatory parenting classes she never completed, and then the biggest blow. The report concluded that Helen showed patterns of controlling, possessive behavior masked as caretaking instincts. Patterns, possessive behavior, caretaking as control. It was everything she was doing to me 20 years ago. But it didn't end there. Another sheet caught my eye, a courthouse seal. A judge's note stating that the family of the neglected baby chose not to press charges out of pity.
as long as the incident remained on record. And Helen had hidden it, buried it, pretended it never happened.
Suddenly, everything made sense. Her obsession, her need to control, her constant interference, her attempts to paint me as unfit. She wasn't just an overbearing mother. She was a woman with a history she was terrified of being exposed. My hand shook as I held the folder. Because this wasn't just personal. This was proof. Proof that Helen had no right to question my ability to care for my child. Proof that she had once endangered a baby. Proof that she was projecting her own failures onto me. Proof that could finally make Daniel listen. Right then, the front door opened. Helen walked in without knocking, as usual. She froze when she saw the folder in my hands. Her face went pale. Not angry, not confused. Terrified. Where did you get that? She whispered. I didn't say a word. Her chest rose and fell rapidly, panic flooding her expression. That's private. You need to give that to me now. Her voice cracked. For the first time, she had lost control. And I realized she wasn't afraid of me reading it. She was afraid of what would happen when Daniel learned the truth. I closed the folder slowly. No, I said quietly. You don't get to take this from me. Not after everything you've done. Her expression twisted. Anger, desperation, fear, all fighting for dominance. You don't understand. I did what I had to do. That baby was fine. People overreacted. Just like you overreact about me? Just like you try to make Daniel believe I'm unstable? Just like you're trying to take my baby. Her lips parted, but no words came out. For the first time, she was cornered, and I wasn't the weak one anymore. Because now, I had truth. I had evidence. I had the one weapon she couldn't twist or manipulate, and I couldn't wait for Daniel to see it. The truth comes out, the mask falls, and the family is forced to face what has been hidden for decades. Daniel came home earlier than usual that evening. I sat on the couch, the beige folder resting on my lap like a loaded weapon. Helen stood near the entryway, pacing, wringing her hands, shooting frantic glances at me. She had tried to take the folder twice, but I kept my hand on it, and she didn't dare to try a third time. When Daniel walked through the door, he immediately sensed the tension. "What's going on?" he asked slowly. Helen stepped forward before I could speak. "Daniel, sweetheart, she's been going through things she shouldn't. She found a file from years ago. It's nothing really, just old paperwork. She's misunderstanding everything." Her voice trembled, desperate. Daniel looked at me, really looked at me. And for the first time in weeks, I didn't look like the weak one, the emotional one, the fragile one. I looked steady, calm, certain. I said quietly, "Sit down. We need to talk." Daniel hesitated, then sat beside me. I opened the folder, slowly, deliberately. Helen let out a soft, strangled sound.
"This," I began, my voice unwavering, "is a social services report from 20 years ago, filed under your mother's name." Daniel frowned, confused. What? Why would there be—" I handed him the first page. He skimmed it casually at first. Then he stopped. His breath caught. His face drained of color. The details hit him like blows. A baby left unsupervised, neglect accusations, a welfare investigation, restrictions placed on Helen, mandatory parenting courses she never completed. Every sentence was another crack in the image he had of his mother. He looked up slowly, eyes wide, betrayed. "Mom, what is this?" Helen's face twisted, panic spilling over into anger. "It's nothing," she snapped. "A misunderstanding. Those people exaggerated everything. I was young. I was stressed." Daniel shook his head. No, this is serious. Why didn't you ever tell me? She stepped closer, reaching for him like a drowning person reaching for a rope. I didn't want you to think badly of me. I was protecting you. Protecting me? Daniel's voice rose, hurt, shocked. By attacking my wife? By making her feel crazy? By telling me she was unstable? Helen froze. The truth exposed her, stripped her. I only wanted what was best, she cried. She can't handle a baby alone, Daniel. I see the signs. She's overwhelmed. She forgets things. She's emotional.
Because you pushed her into that, Daniel yelled. Helen flinched. It was the first time I'd ever seen him raise his voice at her. You manipulated me, he continued. You made me doubt her. You made me think something was wrong with her when you were the one hiding something. Helen's mouth opened and closed like she was suffocating. I had to, she pleaded. If you knew about my past, you'd never let me near the baby. I just wanted another chance to do it right. Another chance? I whispered. So that's what this was. Not love, not concern, just your way of rewriting history? Her eyes snapped to mine, filled with guilt and defensiveness. You don't understand, she whispered. I made a mistake once, one mistake, and I couldn't let anyone take another baby away from me. My heart stopped. She wasn't just controlling. She wasn't just obsessive. She was trying to redeem herself through my child, to replace her failure with my motherhood. Daniel stood up abruptly, running a hand through his hair as he paced the room. Mom, I need you to leave. Helen gasped. Daniel, no, please. Leave, he repeated quietly, hurt, final. The woman who once controlled every room she entered stood frozen. Then slowly, she backed away, as if realizing she no longer had power here. She looked at me, eyes full of hate she could no longer hide, and then at Daniel, who refused to meet his gaze. Finally, she walked out the door. The house fell silent. Daniel turned to me, eyes filled with remorse. I'm so sorry, he whispered. I should have trusted you. I should have protected you. I let her twist everything. I took a shaking breath. It wasn't your fault. She's been manipulating you your whole life. He nodded slowly, as if seeing his mother clearly for the first time. I believe you now, and I won't let her come between us again. For the first time in months, I felt safe, because the truth was finally out. But the story wasn't over. Next came the hardest part. What happens after the mask falls, after the lies collapse, after the family must rebuild from the ashes? And that is the final chapter. After Helen left that night, the house felt different. Not lighter, not immediately peaceful, but clearer. For months, everything had been wrapped in confusion, whispers, manipulation, and doubt. But now, the fog had lifted. Daniel sat next to me, elbows on his knees, hands covering his face. He wasn't crying. Daniel rarely cried. But I could feel the weight crushing him. Realizing that the person you trusted most, the person who raised you, lied to you for decades, it breaks something inside a man. I placed my hand over his. He squeezed it gently, like he was afraid to break me too. We'll figure this out, I said softly, together. And for the first time in a long time, I saw certainty in his eyes. The days that followed. Helen called. She texted. She even came to the door twice. But Daniel didn't answer. He didn't open. He didn't even look tempted. He was protecting us now. Not because I asked him to, but because he finally saw what his mother was capable of. He arranged therapy sessions for himself, wanting to understand how he'd been manipulated for so long. He apologized every single day, even when I told him he didn't need to.
But most importantly, he prioritized me, us, our baby. We rebuilt our communication slowly, with honesty, with gentleness. When our daughter was finally born, Daniel held her with tears in his eyes. And for the first time, Helen wasn't there, hovering, judging, inserting herself into every moment. It was just us, a real family. And you know what surprised me? I didn't feel anger toward Helen anymore. Not really. What I felt was sadness. Sadness for a woman who could have had love, warmth, family, if she hadn't tried to control everything she touched. Her obsession cost her the very thing she wanted most: a relationship with her son, a place in her grandchild's life, a chance to start over. And in trying to replace me, she lost herself completely. A few months later, Daniel received a handwritten letter from his mother. He didn't show it to me immediately, but after a day, he placed it in my hands. It wasn't an apology. Not fully. It was a mixture of regret, excuses, and sorrow twisted together. But one line stood out to me. I wanted to prove I wasn't the woman they said I was, and in doing so, I became worse. For the first time, she admitted the truth. We didn't respond. Some wounds aren't meant to reopen. The final moment. One night, as I rocked our daughter to sleep, Daniel wrapped his arms around me from behind. He whispered,
"You saved our family, not by exposing her, but by not letting her change who you are." And that was it. The ending I didn't expect. The ending I deserved. This story isn't about revenge. It's about clarity, about seeing the truth, even when it hides behind a smile. It's a reminder that sometimes the people who claim to love you the most can harm you in ways strangers never could. But it's also a reminder of something stronger. When truth comes to light, darkness has nowhere left to hide. And in the end, that light saved us.